Hey guys, this is chapter 6 of View from the Cherry Tree. Reluctantly, he made his way toward the small group beside the neighboring house. One of the officers, Riley, looked up and saw him. This the boy who saw it happen? Yes, this is Rob. He was sitting in the tree. He often sits up there. He called us right away, but it was too late. By the time we got her down, she was dead. Wouldn't be surprised if it broke her neck, the other officer commented, gesturing to the ambulance attendants who were hauling out their stretcher. Kind of ironic, ain't it? I mean, she was the pest of the neighborhood with those binoculars, minding everybody else's business, and they're what killed her. You get complaints about her? Mr. Mallory asked. Oh, not officially, not very often, but you hear things. A town the size of this one, she was always calling us about something. Somebody's dog or kid or something. Called us yesterday. Said some young fella drove over her garden hose and wrecked it. He shook his head. Max had overheard that. He strode toward them. That was me. I didn't know she called the police. Her crummy hose was leaky already, and she left it in the street where I couldn't help running over it. Yeah, we figured that out from what she said. Rob remembered the cop's name now, the tall, skinny redhead with the big Adam's apple, Fritz. He didn't know if that was his last name or his first, but they called him Fritz. Bit of a kook, wasn't she? Feuding with everybody all the time. I guess living next door, you got the brunt of it. Well, she wasn't an easy woman to live next to, Mr. Mallory admitted. They were all standing so they didn't have to look at Mrs. Calloway. Rob sneaked a look at her, felt his stomach lurch, and looked quickly away. Somehow, he thought, she'd stopped looking so pop-eyed after they took her down. She attacked Rob last night with a broom when he went over there to get our cat, and she enticed the cat by leaving meat scraps on the back porch. Riley, the shorter, dark-haired one, nodded. She was about ready to be committed, I guess. Maybe it's just as well this way. Better for her than being locked up. Rob cleared his throat. Dad? Later, son. I guess they're ready to take her away. I suppose there'll have to be an inquest. Oh, yes, but there won't be any problem about it, Riley assured them. It's perfectly clear what happened, and the boy saw it. He won't have to testify, will he? He's only 11. I don't know for sure about that. It isn't up to us to decide, but I wouldn't worry about it, Walt. They won't make it any harder on him than they have to. What do you think, Fritz? We better get the crime lab out here. Take some pictures. Well, it looks like an accident, pure and simple, but it wouldn't hurt to protect ourselves with a few pictures. Yeah, let's call in and let somebody else decide. You guys bring a sheet or something you can put over her. Whole blasted neighborhood's out gawking. Rob hadn't noticed, but he did now. People were coming out of their houses, leaning over the back fence, some of them even walking out across the lawns. Dad, when she fell, his father patted him on the shoulder. Come on inside, son. The whole town's here. They don't need us. You want to use our telephone, Fritz? No, I'll use the radio in the car. Go ahead inside. Be easiest if you came downtown, Walt. Let somebody take up your statement. I don't have to do it today, I hope. My daughter's getting married tomorrow, and we've got a million things to do. Monday all right? Well, if it isn't, we'll let you know. Somebody'll call you. Rob was beginning to shake a little. He didn't know why. He had to trot to keep up with his father. Dad, Mrs. Calloway didn't just fall out of the window. Rob, let's not blow it up any bigger than it was, okay? I'd rather not get you involved in it all. You had nothing to do with it, did you? No, except I was spitting cherry pits at her window, and I guess that's why she leaned out the window. Mr. Mallory gave him a tired grin. Well, you ought to have known better than that, after everything else that's happened, but it didn't have anything to do with her hanging herself, you know, so try not to think about it. But there was somebody in there, Dad. I heard. His words were wasted, uttered at the same moment his mother called from the window. Wally, can you come to the phone? It's Jim French, and I told him you were awfully busy, but he said it's important. He sounds upset. Mr. Mallory strode up the front steps and into the house, not hearing Rob's final words. Frustrated, Rob followed him, but his father was already on the telephone, and his mother was saying, Tell him to wait until Monday if it's business, honey. We've got too much to do to worry about anything else now. Mr. Mallory made shushing gestures at her, speaking into the phone. Yes, Jim, this is Walt. It seemed to Rob that his father's face grew grim as he listened, although his mother didn't seem to notice anything. The doorbell rang, and she turned away to answer it. Ellen Anderson stood there, a too thin girl with long brown hair caught back in a ponytail with a rubber band. "Hello, Mrs. Mallory," Darcy said. "I'll be doing her a big favor if I could take Nancy's place in the wedding." "Yes, you will if you can get into her dress." "I think I can, but she's taller than I am, so it would have to be shortened. Maybe you could do that this afternoon." "I don't know how to shorten anything, Mrs. Mallory. I flunked freshman sewing, and my mother just gave up on me." "Maybe my mother's gone to Kansas City for a week. My grandmother's sick." Mrs. Mallory sighed. "Well, all right, go up and try it on. It's in Darcy's room. I'll be up in a minute to pin it up." Rob stood between his parents, feeling an urgent need to say something to one of them. They ought to know Mrs. Calloway was pushed out that window. Surely it was important to let someone know that. "Mom, I need to tell somebody." "Robbie, for heaven's sake, don't bother me now. I'm going to have to shorten that dress myself, obviously, unless I can get Aunt Grace to do it. Is she still here?" "She's upstairs," Teddy volunteered, coming through the back of the house with a loaded tray. "Where are you going with the refreshments?" "For Darcy and Aunt Grace and me. Darcy says we won't have time to sit down for lunch." The doorbell rang. "Robbie, see who—" "Wally, where are you going?" "I have to go see French. It's important, Marge. It can't wait until Monday. I'll be back as soon as I can." "What about the champagne? It has to be iced down. Maybe you can find someone else to do it. Otherwise, I'll do it when I get back. Don't worry, I can pick it up any time up to midnight, honey. Rob, stay out of trouble and help your mother a little bit, will you?" The doorbell rang again. Mrs. Mallory opened the door. "Oh, hi, Derek. Go on in. I'm just leaving. See you later." Derek stood uncertainly just inside the doorway. "Mrs. Mallory?" "Hello, Derek." Rob could see it when she remembered that his aunt had just died. The expression that crossed her face was a mixture of sympathy and reluctance to be the one to break the news. "I thought maybe there was something I could do to help. Run errands or something?" "Derek, I appreciate the offer, and there are things, but maybe you'd ought to go home. The police, they'll have notified your mother by now, and—" Derek stared at her. "The police? What are you talking about? You haven't heard about your aunt, then?" "I'm sorry. I don't want to be the one to—" Teddy, coming back down the stairs, paused on the bottom step. "I forgot the salt, Derek. Haven't you had the radio on or anything? They just announced it on the radio." "Announced what?" Derek's eyes swept across all their faces, evaluating what he saw there. "Something's happened to Aunt Bee. She's dead, Derek." Teddy descended the final step. "She fell out the window and she's dead." "From falling out her window?" Derek asked. "She was wearing those binoculars and the strap caught on the limb of the cherry tree." Derek swallowed. "She hanged herself?" "I guess so. Anyway, she's dead. The police and the ambulance took her away." "Won't your mother need you at home then? Will she be terribly upset? Will she be in hysterics?" Derek allowed. "Which means it's no place for me to be. Dad's home. He's not working today. Let him handle Mother. I'd rather run errands than cope with that. If there's something I can do to make myself useful." "Well, if you think you won't upset your family more." Mrs. Mallory hesitated. "I'd rather run errands," Derek repeated firmly. "Well, Wally was supposed to pick up the champagne this afternoon from Bullock's. There's room for part of it in the refrigerator at the country club, but the rest will have to be iced. We've got the cans, but someone has to pick up the ice too. I'll be glad to do that for you, Mrs. Mallory." There were sounds overhead, and Derek glanced up, no doubt hoping for a look at Darcy, but it was only Aunt Grace. "Marge, that dress will have to be taken up about 3 inches to fit this girl. You want me to do it?" Aunt Grace asked, leaning over the railing. "Yes, would you? That would be a tremendous help. Here, Derek, I have the check written out to pay for the champagne, and I'll find some cash for the ice. Oh, here's the key to get into the reception hall. It's for the back door." Derek looked at Rob. "You want to come along and help, sport?" Rob licked his lips. "I need to talk to Mom for a minute first." "Robbie, I don't have time to talk to you. Go on, you can help Derek handle the champagne. And while I think of it, did you get those spiders out of the living room?" "No, not yet. I'll put them on the back porch." His mother's voice was firm. "You get them completely out of the house the way I told you. I don't want anyone coming across a jar full of spiders and being startled into a fit or something." "But somebody might take them if I leave them around outside," Rob pointed out reasonably. "I think that is most unlikely. Go on, help Derek or do something to make yourself useful." He felt a slight stirring of resentment at the lack of sympathy in her tone. He didn't want to go with Derek. Derek was perfectly capable of hauling champagne by himself, Rob thought. He wanted to talk to someone. Maybe Teddy would listen. Teddy usually listened, better than the rest of them. "Oh, well, all right, whatever you say." Derek hesitated as if reluctant to leave. "What happened exactly about Aunt Bee? How did she come to fall out the window?" She was pushed, Rob said, and saw no change of expression in Derek's face. Oh, come on, Rob. That's not a thing to joke about. I'm not joking. I saw her. You saw someone push her out the window? Derek was juggling keys, money, and the check, unbelieving. Who did it? I don't know. All I saw was his hands. A man? You saw a man's hands? What did they look like? With a growing sense of urgency, Rob tried to remember exactly how the hands had looked. I don't know. I only saw them for a minute. More like seconds, really, I guess. They were just a man's hands. He looked at Derek helplessly, shrugging. How did you know they were a man's hands, as opposed to a woman's? Derek wasn't the one he would have chosen to tell. But at least he was listening more than anyone had done so far. Encouraged, Rob tried to be specific. They were too big to be a woman's. They were big, way bigger than mine. He spread his own fingers and stared at them for a minute, trying to see those other hands. Did they have hair all over them, or what? Dark hair, maybe? Rob searched his mind. Not that I remember, no more than anybody's, Dad's or yours, or a shadow loomed on the other side of the screen and he looked that way, or Max's, just hands. Max saw him looking and opened the door for himself. It's all right if I just walk in, isn't it? Your mother looks like she's ready to scream every time the doorbell or the phone rings, so I hate to use them. Hello, Derek. Rob's been telling me something interesting. He says somebody pushed Aunt Bee out her window. Max shook his head. Honest to God, Rob, you've got a macabre sense of humor. You really have, kid. Where's Teddy? Upstairs. What's macabre? He means you aren't funny, Derek told him. Listen, you coming with me after the champagne or not? No, you go on. I don't suppose you'd be interested, Max, in hauling the champagne over to the country club and icing it down. Mr. Mallory had to go somewhere. Max shook his head. No thanks, man. I'm hoping Teddy can cut loose from his madhouse sometime so we can get out for a few hours before the rehearsal. Is it safe to go up there, Rob? I hate to guess these days, Rob said. It was no use telling anything to these two jerks. Maybe it wasn't really their fault, because he had told them some whoppers in the past. For the first time, he could see the point to that stupid story about the boy who cried wolf. He'd never told them he'd seen anybody murdered before, though. Max hesitated, looking up the stairs. Hey, Teddy, you up there? She appeared on the upper landing, clad in a pale blue, full-skirted long dress. One of the bridesmaid dresses Rob knew. She looked quite un-Teddy-ish, even to Rob, with her hair caught back with a blue ribbon and a touch of lipstick on her mouth. Max pursed his lips in a long, drawn-out wolf whistle. Hey, come on down, Loverly, and let's see you. No, I'm afraid to try the stairs in this. Darcy'd kill me if I stepped on the hem and tore it or broke my neck falling. But it's pretty, isn't it? You're pretty, Max said, and there was a different note in his voice. Rob recognized it with regret. Yep, old Darcy was moving on, but Teddy was going to take up where Darcy left off with all the guys in town. Teddy showed her dimples. Wait a minute until I get it off, and I'll be down. Okay, Max turned to look at Derek. I thought you were running off somewhere. Still, Derek hesitated. I am, only I thought it would be a help to have another pair of hands. I think I'm handling something like 10 cases of champagne if I heard Mr. Mallory right. Well, these hands are going to be otherwise engaged. Thanks for the invitation. Max put his hands in his pants pockets and walked into the living room, switching on the TV. Derek looked at Rob, who shook his head. See you later, Derek. Derek muttered something under his breath, letting himself out the front door. It was quiet when he had gone. Rob licked his lips and made one more effort. Max, he made it sound funny, but it wasn't. It was true. There was a cartoon show on the screen. Max flipped it off and straightened up. What was true? That I saw somebody push Mrs. Calloway. Max shook his head. I'd have been tempted to push her myself. I know you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, but who can be sorry that old Biddy has cashed in? No matter who moves into that house next door, it's got to be an improvement over her. Momentarily diverted, Rob asked, You think somebody else will move in? Well, not right away. They'll have to read her will, and it'll go through probate and all that jazz. And maybe it'll belong to Derek's mother, partly, anyway. Did she have any other relatives? They won't want it themselves, so they'll either rent it or sell it. More than likely. So somebody will live in it eventually. Max, would it be murder if somebody pushed her? Max regarded him casually. Rob, you watch too much of the wrong kind of TV, or maybe that's the only kind there is. No, I mean it. Would it be murder if he didn't really intend to kill her? I mean, he couldn't have known the strap on the binoculars would catch on the tree, but you couldn't murder anybody by pushing them out a first-floor window, could you? If If it was old Mrs. Calloway, I'd say the entire neighborhood would express its gratitude. Hey, you look good in ordinary clothes, too, girl. It was no use. He couldn't get through to Max. He hadn't gotten very close even before Teddy showed up. There was no sense trying now. Max wasn't listening. Teddy looked different somehow, even back in her normal jeans and open-neck shirt. I don't dare go away, she told Max. If Mom needs me, I have to be on call. I might have known you're only dangling the bait in front of me. You've no intention of letting me have a chance to bite it. I think there's a load of stuff to take over to the reception hall. Champagne glasses and paper plates and stuff like that. Can I tell Mom your car's available? If you go along with the glasses and the paper plates, Max conceded. So long, sport. Don't watch any more TV. It's bad for you. And they were gone. And he hadn't had a chance to talk to Teddy either. Ordinarily, he'd have been sure Teddy would listen. But after seeing her just now, the way she was turning on the sparkle for old Max, Rob thought in discouragement he wasn't sure of anything.